Hey guys, welcome to today's video. Today I'm doing another painting master study. I came across this painting you can see on the right hand side from one of my artist friends on Instagram who shares masterworks. It's by a Russian painter called Nikolai Dmitrievich Kuznetsov. I've probably butchered that, I apologise for anyone who speaks the language. But yeah, it's a beautiful painting. I'll flash up in a minute a zoom-in version. But what really drew me to it was initially it was the expression on the girl's face, but more than that, once I started looking up very closely, I saw all these beautiful shifts of colour, and I just really wanted to try and replicate that myself in a quick study. This study took me about 2 hours, I believe. I started off by doing a quick drawing in a raw amber paint, just a quick sketch of the portrait I see on the right hand side. I wasn't really going for a likeness, if I'm going to be completely honest. I just kind of wanted to really deep dive into the skin tones I saw in the painting. I always really like to have a goal in mind when I'm doing a study, and in this case it was really just trying to get my head around how, with a very limited palette like a Zorn palette, that I could really replicate the shifts in skin tone I'm seeing in this painting. So the paintbrushes I'm using are very cheap Rosemary brushes, so they're just hog hair brushes, so quite rough and scratchy. I tried to start, other than the underdrawing, which I did do with a finer brush, the colour I'm trying to apply with a thicker brush and a thicker hand. I'm really trying not to dive into the details, but just mix the colours I see and apply those down on the painting. She's sort of turned away from the light, so she looks like she's in a room with a candle or a light behind her that's catching on her hair and her cheek, but the rest of her face is really in shadow. We can see lots of colours here if we focus on the shadows side of the face, but if you squint, actually that side of her face is quite dark and the tone is very uniform. So it was a bit of a challenge for me, is how can I have all those shifts of colour and yet keep the tones, the hierarchy of tones accurate throughout. So yeah, that was the big challenge for me, really. And how can I stop from being muddy? It would be so easy for this to get to be a really muddy painting. I'm not quite sure I even 100% achieved not having a muddy painting, but yeah, how can I make this not as muddy, or avoid muddiness in general? So in terms of the process, I started off by painting the background. I just thought that'd be quite helpful because I know the tones on the face are quite nuanced, so I think sometimes it's really hard to just start with a face floating in white, especially, the canvas I'm using has a bit of a tone to it, so that does help, but still I think it makes it a little bit easier once you place the background and get that right. Now I have changed the tilt, it's my biggest sin. In this case I've made her more kind of leaning back a little bit more. So yeah, despite trying not to do that, it happened again. I'm sorry. So when we've got the drawing down, then you can see I'm just going in and blocking the major tones. I always get a little bit sidetracked. Ideally what you want to be doing is just picking maybe 4 or 5 colours and tones and just blocking in the big areas. So I probably should have done her jacket and her hair as well as the background, but I got a little bit distracted by all those colours in the face. There's lots of different ways to do it. You can try and kind of get everything right straight away, so you're working in very small tiled areas, or you can work in big areas and kind of generalize the colours and tones you see and then adjust from there. The good thing about oil painting is, as long as you're painting quite thinly on your paper, you're kind of really scratching in dry scrubby paint, then you can really lay it up on top of it quite easily. And as long as you're building up and using more and more paint as you go along, then you shouldn't have too much of a problem with colours mixing together. It depends a lot on the surface, but I'm still trying to figure all that out. Still trying to figure out which surface I like, what kind of thickness of paint I like, and what mediums I like. So it's definitely a work in progress. I don't have answers here. I have only suggestions and questions. In terms of what I'm using, I've got the Zorn palette, so that's only 4 colours: black, white, cadmium red, and ochre. So everything's mixed out of those with a little bit of raw umber for the underdrawing. I'm using the brushes I mentioned. I'm using a little bit of Solvent, Gamsol, and the canvas I have is a it's a 20 centimetre by 20 centimetre panel. I'll include details in the comments. And once I had most of the canvas covered, and it's not completely covered, but it's mostly covered, then it was going in and just seeing if I could replicate some of those adjustments in colour. And the questions I was really asking myself is it warmer or is it cooler? So looking to see whether it's more grey or more pinky. Can I see any greens in there, any purples, any greys? And by kind of asking myself those questions, obviously the tone questions as well, is it too dark, is it too light? If you're constantly asking yourself those questions and endeavouring to really, rather than just kind of smudge the colours you see already, but try and really make an effort to look at a specific shape of colour and blend that colour yourself. I think by doing that I really get good practice on colour mixing. I spent quite a lot of time when I was doing a lot of digital work on learning how to kind of manually select colours rather than use the colour picker. And I think subconsciously this is the same process I want to go through when I practice these paintings, of really learning how to accurately capture the colours I'm seeing, in the hope that if I do enough of these studies, maybe it'll transfer across to painting in real life. I think these kind of colour shifts you see on these paintings, I mean, obviously this was painted in probably the late 1800s, so this guy didn't have a colour photograph to work from. But I think one thing that I've noticed a lot of artists do today is they really miss out on some of those kind of shifts in colour, and I think you only really see those, honestly, when you're painting from life. I just don't get the same impression when I'm painting from a photograph. And there's just something about having someone in front of you where you really kind of focus on those colour shifts a lot more and you can see them a lot more easily. So so it's quite nice, I think, having these kind of colour shifty paintings to copy really kind of helps practice how to capture those shifts. And I think paintings where we do capture the shifts in tone and colour, they just seem so much more alive than ones where you haven't. So you can see I've definitely not got the lightness right. There's something a bit off about her left eye, I think, or her right eye, the one on the left hand side. But yeah, I think with oil painting you can kind of carry on adjusting as you go. That's absolutely fine. I think that I really love doing these oil paintings, but the thing for me that I always kind of struggle with is when I try and take a photograph of them, they just don't look as good. I mean, the wonderful thing about digital is you press a button and you get a completely accurate copy of your work with no loss of like colour, texture. It's all there, 100% accurate for online posting. But when you're doing a painting and you try and take a photograph of that, really tough to do, really tough to get a nice picture. So this was the finished painting after a couple of hours. I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. Yeah, I think it's a nice one. I do like the subtlety of her expression. I think I've captured something of it, even though the likeness is completely off. Well, that's all from me today. I'll list all the materials I used in the description. Please feel free to ask any questions in the comments section, like, subscribe, all that jazz, and I'll speak to you in the next video. Thanks very much, guys. Bye-bye.